As you know, in the last few months, we've been talking more and more on the channel here about other forms of antiques other than Chinese and Japanese and Korean and Asian works of art in general. We've been talking more and more about carpets and textiles. We've been talking a bit more about American furniture, European furniture, and other decorative art and material culture, basically that people are interested in. And I think there's a growing interest in it. And I want to talk a little bit about two sales today. There's only a tiny bit of Chinese stuff in this sale, but there's a couple of really nice pieces. But I want to talk a bit about two sales that are taking place in the next few weeks. One of them is at Brunks down in Asheville, North Carolina. It's the sale of the historic Irirs Court. The contents of that structure, and I'm going to mention a little bit and go to the history of it because it's pretty fascinating. But the material there is some of the finest American furniture you're going to see in one sale, in one place, probably for quite a while. This was a legendary collection, and there's a very interesting history about the whole thing. And I'm going to talk about a sale that's coming up in Germany in some detail that I touched on the other day on the weekly video at Rippon Boswell's. There is a collection there of some exceedingly rare Turkoman pieces that belong to a well-known collector in Germany, and I'm going to go through that. But I want to start with this first. I want to talk a bit about Irirs Court. Irirs Court is probably one of the finest pieces of Greek Revival architecture. It's a house in America, and it was originally constructed in the middle of the 19th century for a judge in Albany, Georgia. This was before the Civil War. And this is a look at the house. It's absolutely spectacular. And living near this house as a child was a man named Edward Vasson Jones. And he died in 1980, unfortunately, but he was in the architectural world of American architecture and classical architecture. He was the guy. He was the man. He knew more about it. He had a huge impact on that world as far as architecture goes, designing things and so forth. And he grew up near Irirs Court, where the structure was built originally. During his career, he did a lot of amazing things. If you're familiar at all with the redoing of the State Department diplomatic rooms in Washington that Mr. Conger was involved with as the curator. Mr. Jones was there as their advisor on architecture in the interiors, proper proportions, scale, what furnishings should go in there, and so forth. He was sort of the guy. He did the White House. He did all kinds of major projects for private and public buildings during his life, and he was very much beloved and appreciated, and he was the go-to guy. At any rate, he grew up in Albany and near this house, and in the late 60s, early 70s, there was talk of the town tearing this house down because it was, it's a big property, it needed work and so forth. It had gone into a bit of disrepair, and they were going to auction off. They're going to rip out all the architectural elements and sell them off to try to make some money for the town. Well, Mr. Jones wouldn't hear of it, and he found somebody who was willing to buy the entire house, have it deconstructed piece by piece and numbered, but loaded onto railroad cars and sent to Moultrie, Georgia, where the house was reconstructed under his supervision. And he did a phenomenal job with it. The only thing they changed was on the interior, they widened the hallway slightly. That was the only thing they altered. He felt the house would be better served with a slightly wider hallway, but it wasn't a massive difference. But other than that, all the rooms were the same. The floors, the ceilings, the moldings, any moldings that were damaged were restored and put back to their original condition. And the interior of the house was absolutely a wonder. And then he passed away. He passed away in 1980. But after that, the owners of the house, they had a lot of taste and a lot of knowledge about antiques, and they knew people who knew about antiques, and they went about furnishing this house. And they went to New York, they went to Sotheby's and Christie's, all the major dealers knew them, and they went around and they bought the finest of the finest of the finest in all categories of decorative art. And it was all focused pretty much entirely on federal and or Greek Revival, taste classical American classical furniture. And in it, they also included all of the decorative accessories and accoutrements that you would expect to see in an early house of this type. And if you go to the website at Brunks, where they have the listing up, there's several hundred lots in here from the house. And you'll notice that there's lots of early porcelain, for example. If you like early European porcelain, Flight Barn Bar, Chamberlain Worcester, Paris porcelain, and so forth, Derby, you name it, it's in here. And there's some stunning forms. And the estimates are crazy low. The estimates are very low. I think that's their way of saying all of it goes. Now, you may not get some of these pieces for these estimates, but they're all extremely rare. And one of the things that you'll find in the listings, if they're available, the family kept incredible records of the objects, where they were bought, when they were bought, and how much they were paid, how much was paid for them. So you can go through it, and you're going to see a real kaleidoscope of information about where these pieces came from and when and how they were acquired. And these are just some of them here. It's a real dazzling collection. But I want to start with some of the furniture lots, just to show you what's in here and give you some idea of the values here. They're just astonishing. You have a really fine New York Pembroke table, classical style, with the carved acanthus leaves on the knees of the legs, paw, feet, beautiful mahogany inlay, and you'll notice all of the pieces are in very good condition. You're not going to see, peeling veneers or any sort of thing like that. You'll see the natural wear and age of the piece, but you won't see anything else. As far as damage goes, I don't think. And this is an absolutely great table. And I think there are 3 tables of this style, if you can believe it, in this sale. The family liked this form very much. It's a practical form also, because there's drop leaves. You can take it out when you need it for entertaining, for dinner parties and so forth, and then put them away. And that was the style. This is estimated at $15,000 to $25,000, has a $7,500 opening bid. And let's see, it was the provenance goes back to Miss Louisa Throop. She was the daughter of Governor Enos Throop in New York, and back in, I don't know when he was the governor, actually. I think it was in the late 19th century. And you'll see the name also, Virginia White Interiors, Atlanta, on here. She was their buyer. She was the person who bought for the family and represented them, inspected the furniture, and checked out, to make sure it was a good buy. And she did a really good job, too. She was a wizard. And then you have things like this, a really, really fine New York American classical sofa with silk upholstery on it. Beautifully done, great carving, great arms, with these ribbed affairs running along it, and all this paw feet with brass fittings on the ends. Beautiful, beautiful sofa. Absolutely classical. Absolutely a beautiful classical piece of furniture. Made around 1815, attributed to the Duncan Fife family. And you're going to see attributed to Duncan Fife or attributed to Seymour in here. And that's because they could never say, it's all on their designs. But these guys often didn't sign their furniture, so that they don't want to stick their necks out too far, so they'll say attributed. But rest assured, it was made by that workshop. I think it's a pretty safe assumption to make. Anyway, this was sold for $49,000 in 1985. And it's now back on the market because the American furniture market has gone down so much in value. Not in quality. The quality is still there. It's all spectacular stuff. But now it's estimated at $5,000 to $10,000 40 years later, with a $2,600 minimum opening bid. If you live in the area, if you live within 6-hour drive of this, you could buy. This is an opportunity to buy some absolutely spectacular furniture and rent a truck and go pick it up yourself with a bunch of packing blankets and bring it home. That's all I'm going to say on that. All right, and then you have this. This is probably the most expensive piece of furniture in the sale, and probably the rarest anyway. It's attributed to Duncan Fife, the New York cabinet maker, and it's a absolutely beautiful break front cabinet. All mahogany veneered. Again, you have these gilded acanthus leaves on the paw feet, which was one of the things you see often on Seymour Furniture and other furniture makers in New York too. But beautifully done veneering all the way up. These Gothic doors, Iglamazé doors, and then at the top you have this very elegant, pointed, refined finial leaping off the top of it. Just a spectacular piece of furniture. I mentioned this the other day in the weekly video. It's estimated at $60,000 to $90,000 with a $30,000 opening bid, and it was bought for $115,000 back in the 80s. and it's all on there. Then you have this really fine classical, as they described it beautifully, figured and inlaid mahogany work table. It was also made in New York. It's spectacular quality work. Has these sort of tambour ribbed fronts on it here that run down it. Beautiful mahogany veneer. Looks like it has ivory poles on it. I think it might. You want to check the. Those are ivory poles. What do you know? They're legal to sell because they're de minimis, what's known as a de minimis part of the furniture. They're less than 5% of the total piece of furniture, so there's no problem with that. Here's the interior with the writing surface and all the fittings and so forth. This could be used as a sewing stand and so forth. They could just call them generically work tables. Again, attributed to Duncan Fife, and it was, again, bought by Virginia White Interiors for $25,000 back in the 80s. And it's estimated today at $8,000 to $12,000 with a $4,000 opening bid. Now over to this. There are a lot of good mirrors in the sale. If you like mirrors or you want a really good pair of mirrors, there's some good opportunities in the sale, and there are these. These are really large mirrors. These are 6 feet tall. These aren't little looking glasses. Each one of these is 6 feet tall. And again, in the very much American classical taste of the post-federal period going into the early 19th century, you have the eagles on top. And federal furniture was a huge shift away from what was popular prior to the Revolution, which was Chippendale furniture and that sort of thing, heavier furniture. And after the Revolutionary War, because the new democracy based on Greek democracy, they adopted the taste in many ways of classical Greek art and classical Greek culture, and it was also taught in schools. It became a big thing. And here you have these 2 mirrors. These are extraordinary. They're early 19th century mirrors. They look to be in incredibly good condition. And I love the eagles on top with the leaves coming off, and these cattails attached to them at the ends. I think those are supposed to be cat and nine tails. But again, they are a mirror pair also. You notice both the eagles are facing inward at each other. They're not going in the same direction. Very, very rare pair of mirrors. And they are estimated at $40,000 to $60,000 with a $20,000 opening bid. And they feel they were probably made in Boston. And they were sold by Ginsberg and Levy in New York, one of the great decorators. Mr. Charles Smith was the owner of the house, by the way, and he bought them. And they've been published and all this other stuff. There's a whole bunch of write-up on them down here. And they paid $82,000 for them in the 1980s. And then back to this, another mirror, a really fine classical giltwood and eagle maze panel looking glass with a sunflower motif. Now, this is a New York mirror. Pretty classical New York mirror, and you see here the center panel here, right below the flowers. That's a reverse painting on glass. That's actually glass. That's not a painted wooden panel. It's glass. And then above it are the sunflowers, and then the acorn finials on top. All of this is such classical stuff. And then you have these acanthus leaves going up at the top of the columns, very classical. And then these barley twist side rods running down on both sides. Absolutely great mirror. Estimated at just $1,500 to $2,500 with a $750 opening bid. And this mirror is about a little over 4 feet tall. It's a good sized mirror, and it looks to be in very, very nice condition. And again, back in the day, we sold mirrors like this at auction, and they always brought $5,000 to $7,000 pretty much consistently. Today, the prices are less, so they are a bargain. The value of the work is still there, as they say. And then moving over to this is a really wonderful painting by Severin Rosen. And Severin Rosen was an American artist. He died in 1871. They have this information down. He was a German-American artist, and he was extremely highly regarded in his life. You've probably heard of his name. And this is what he was known for, this kind of work here. These clusters of fruits, very European, 16th, 17th century European style painting. You see it a lot. You see Dutch paintings done this way and so forth. Northern European, as I said. And here you have this meticulous work that he was able to do because he had a real sense of light, and you'll notice it on the edges of the grapes in the middle, for example, right here. he's captured the reflection of sunlight coming into the room, because there was obviously no other form of lighting. So it was always based on how sunlight would shine into a room very often on paintings, and how they would accommodate them, give them a very three-dimensional appearance. He had enormous sensitivity to color. He was able to do all the different colors so beautifully. Watermelons, and here's a bird's nest with some eggs in it and so forth, and lemons cut open and stuff. The abundance, as it were, of America at the time. And there's a beautiful work by a highly regarded artist, estimated at $28,000 to $48,000. And it was bought in 1984 by Virginia White for the family. She had to pay $32,000 for it with it then. And they have the receipts. Always keep in mind, they have the receipts for most of all of this stuff. So if you buy something, you get the receipt, you get the history, you get the provenance, and you get a great object that came from a very famous and highly regarded house. And then there's this painting. This is one of my favorites. It's a luminous painting done by Albert Bierstadt. And Bierstadt was, of course, one of the very finest American painters who ever lived. His works are in the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. I think the most famous is Storm Over the Rockies, the one that's there anyway. That's the one in the museum. And they have this one. And he was known for doing these very amazing luminous skies that were so popular during the 19th century. And not unlike Fitzhenry Lane, who lived here in Gloucester, who painted the famous marine paintings. Here, Bierstadt did these coastal scenes, and he did mountain scenes. He traveled. He did landscapes. But you have this spectacular scene of the sun emerging from behind the rock, and then the reflection of the sun hitting and sort of bouncing off all of these rocky outcroppings along the shore. Beautifully done, exceptional work, and it measures 30 by 38 inches, so it's a pretty big painting. And there's some good history in here. And they paid $126,000 for it in 1984. So it's estimated here today at 100 to 200,000, because they don't really know. It has apparently a current bid of 140,000 on it already. It's going to get there. This is an extraordinary work by the artist. It really is very, very fine. And then there's this great classical mahogany brass inlaid game table, probably New York, attributed to Duncan Phyfe. And there it is. Again, you have this very high level of refinement as far as the work goes. Lots of good veneering going on, fine mahogany, top high-grade mahogany. And the mahogany you see on this furniture isn't the same as the mahogany you see today. I should point something out if you're not into early furniture. The early furniture in America and in England, where they utilized mahogany, it was all coming out of basically Santo Domingo and Cuba. And these were old forests. And eventually they depleted those forests. They wiped them out. And today the mahogany you get is what they call fast growth hybrid mahogany that doesn't have the figuring, doesn't have the swirls, the grains, because the trees aren't as big, and they're grown to grow very fast. These trees were very slow in growth, and they were hundreds of years old. And as they went in deeper and deeper into these lumber areas to extract wood, to harvest the wood, the trees got older and older, and you ended up by the Federal period with some highly figured mahogany coming out, and it got more and more highly figured the further they went into these old jungles and dug out these massive mahogany trees and brought them back for shipping. But this is a splendid example. Again, you have the acanthus leaves running down the leg, these beautiful paw feet, and these bambooed supports and so forth. Just a tremendous quality. $5,000 to $10,000 estimate. And this was bought at Sotheby's. Let's see here. I think it's Sotheby's. Yeah. Sotheby's in 1988 for $14,250 as a $2,600 opening bid. If you want to own a really great piece of American furniture from the Federal period, I would urge you to really make an effort here, because you're not going to see it again. And then there's this, a pair of Seymour tables from Boston. Very, very fine lyre base with brass mounts on them, probably gilt brass mounts, probably from Europe, France, or England or something. And very fine crossbanding in the inlay, top quality mahogany, and lots of detail, but highly refined when you consider that these were all done on a bench with hand tools, and how superb the workmanship was. They were absolute perfect. And you have a pair of tables that match perfectly. That's the amazing part of this. is that they are absolutely interchangeable. The precision that these were made with is stunning, just stunning. And if you've got a big living room and you want a pair of elegant tables, this is about as good as it gets. They're estimated at 30 to 50,000 with a $15,000 opening bid. That seems very reasonable, believe it or not. And they were made in the Seymour workshops, either by John or Thomas Seymour. And then over to this, a very, very fine New England, probably up around our area, Salem or Essex County, federal inlaid table, circa 1805. And they've got the history on it. They paid $6,500 for it in 1983, which is completely believable. That's what they were selling for. But this is a very, very lovely example. Notice all of the decoration and changes, shifts in color you see is all veneering. And you see that the left side here, the veneer matches the right side, so they swirl in the same direction because these are again crotch veneered or bookmark veneered pieces. And there's a piece coming up I'm going to want to show you. It's my favorite in the whole sale is a Portsmouth secretary that's coming up very shortly. Oh no, here it is. I knew it was in the list somewhere. Anyway, this Portsmouth, New Hampshire produced some awfully good furniture. People don't, for many, many years, people didn't really recognize that. And they didn't think of Portsmouth as being a primary furniture area. And then people began to do some historic research and they found out that all these great workshops did work there. And they made their own style of furniture. We talked about the Dunlop chest on chest that's coming up at Smith's in New Hampshire in a week or two. Again, Portsmouth area. And here you have this. And this is a very unusual, I don't know if it's unique, but boy, it's an awfully unusual federal inlaid, birch veneered inlaid secretary. And there's a bunch of elements on here that are really, really interesting. One of them is the flame birch drawer fronts. And these are, again, crotch veneered. They take a piece of veneer, split it open like a book. And so there's a right side and a left side. And you can see how the veneers work together. The flames of the drawers are going off there. Here you can see it. Flaming the veneers in the wood, the birch flames off to the right, and then there's a section where it goes off to the left. Again, you look over here, and there it is. Had a flip lid, so you could get into this compartment. It's got a lot of interesting features in it. And here you have the top of the center panel on the door, the cubby door that opens, and then at the top you have this really, really fine birch veneered, these little tiny narrow drawers that run around the top with even smaller, almost micro mosaic inlays of different colors. The amount of work that it took to make this, when you consider the period, is unbelievable. And if you pull the desk in, you can see the top. There are those little tiny drawers. Okay, there you are. And the sidebars come up almost like columns and support a slightly flared top. And then you see the repeat pattern again across there that's down on the drawers and running down over the side of the center panel. And then you have these little cubby holes in the middle for papers, documents, and whatnot. It's just this is a really amazing piece of furniture. And I think the estimate is crazy low. I think the estimate is ridiculous, $5,000 to $8,000, $2,600 opening bid. Back in the 90s, they did a show on Portsmouth furniture that was very, very successful. And they showed a number of pieces like this. And this was, I don't know if this was in the show or not, but boy, it should have been. It's one of the nicest pieces of Portsmouth furniture I've ever seen. And I hope it brings $50,000. It's such a beautiful thing. It's really such a great thing. It's my favorite thing in the whole auction. If I said you could have any one thing from the sale, what would it be? I'd say it's this desk, this secretary. It's absolutely beautiful. And the top is a tambour, by the way. I didn't mention that. A tambour. Now the doors are open, but tambours are little tiny thin slits of wood. You can see these area here. They're little tiny slits of wood that are interlocked with each other. And you can open it and they roll back into the sides. Okay, they roll back like hundreds of little hinges and fold around. And then when you want to close it, you pull it back gently and it'll close up over it. But they actually coil up onto like a spool. And it's very difficult to make one of those. Extremely difficult. And it's amazing they even last. The English also made them, but the American cabinet makers excelled at them. All right, and then you have this, another North Shore piece of furniture, probably Salem, I would guess, or Essex County somewhere, but very refined, serpentine front, birchwood inlaid trim. All the light wood on the drawer here is birchwood, and then mahogany crotch veneered again under the drawer fronts. And these drawer fronts are all serpentine; they bend. So it's a very three-dimensional piece of furniture. And then you have these columns up the side that are reeded, the beautifully turned, delicately turned feet, and then cookie corner tops. These little rounded edges that protrude off the top. That was a characteristic you saw on Federal furniture, on Sheraton furniture, and that sort of thing. It was an interesting touch. But this is a very beautiful piece of furniture. And again, this in the 90s would have been easy a $7,000 to $10,000 chest. That would have been the estimate on it. I don't know what they said they paid for it. They don't say. There's no history on this one at all. It's one of the pieces of the sale. It doesn't have much history, but it's only estimated $1,500 to $2,500 with a $750 opening bid. That's an absolute bargain. And then other stuff in the sale is this. You have the China trade plates. These are beautiful, and these were done during the Yongchen period, and these were done based on a design by a Dutch woman who was an artist who painted botanical scenes and so forth. And they did with her work sometimes what they did with Cornelis Pronk, where he designed things in Europe, and they would send the design over to China, and then they would replicate it on a piece of porcelain. So they provided the physical designs that they wanted, and she did these. And what's unusual about these is the colors are so splendid, and these are very rare. These are probably rarer than Cornelis Pronk dishes, and these are exceedingly rare. Beautiful light green and blues and so forth. And they paid $3,000, as I recall, for them back in the 1980s. Yeah, the lot sold from Earl Vandekar, who's one of the top. The Vandekars are the top porcelain dealers, and some of the top porcelain dealers in Europe, England. And right now they're for sale for $2,000 to $4,000 estimate with a $1,000 bid. If you really like rare porcelain in China trade, I would urge you to try to buy these. I really would. That's no joke. These are unique. They're not unique. There are other groups of these around, but very few of them. And the artist's name, she was a Swiss-Dutch botanist, Maria, there it is, Sibylla Marian. And she died in 1717, and they took her designs and sent them into China to have them made into porcelain. All right, and then moving over to this is a very nice pseudo-armorial porcelain plate. There it is, nicely done, good use of negative space. How big is this plate, did they say? 10 inches in diameter. Let's see here. Came from... let me see. It looks like, let's see here, Provenance. There's not much history on where this one came from. This one, there it is. No, there's a similar one. It was sold at Christie's in 2024, lot 154. There you go. Nice looking piece of porcelain. It's got some molded relief work around it. It's in perfect condition, delicately painted. Looks fine to me. And the estimate is $8,000 to $1,200 with a $400 starting price. That seems a little heavy for that. But this is great, and the estimate seems low. This is a piece from the Motorhead collection. And the Motorheaders were wildly passionate China trade collectors. And they collected only the best of the best of the best. You'll see their name often, but you'll see the name Motorhead on the backs of porcelain that was made in the 20th century, because they took their collection and began replicating it in reproduction. They have huge marks on the back that would say Motorhead. So no one was being deceived or anything. It wasn't to fool anyone, but they wanted to share the beauty of the stuff that they had. So they actually had a factory that produced it. I believe it was located in Spain, and they did phenomenally high quality work. But this is not a reproduction. This was an actual China trade piece that was in their collection that they probably did reproduce at some point. But this is an 18th century Chinese piece. But the rhino horn cup, the libation cup here, I call them rhino horns, or libation cups technically. The decoration on it and the colors are so strong and so striking and so vivid. This may be the best cup and saucer set I've ever seen of this style. The absolute best one. It's incredible how good it is. The details are amazing. The colors are all fantastic. Deep, rich, beautifully done colors. And the estimate I think is crazy low. $1,000 to $2,000 with a $500 opening bid. Um, you know, I'm surprised. It's got one bid on it so far, I think. I'm surprised this isn't up to a couple of $1,000s. It's such a sweet, superb piece. All right, it really, really is. And the last thing in the sale is this. This is the last item in the sale. It's a New York classical mahogany ormolu sofa table, attributed to the workshop of Michael Allison. And again, classical, Enthymiones at the bottom, and then you have all the lion mask candles and the crossed flowers, the crossed leaves, and this beautiful mahogany inlay, mahogany veneering rather, excuse me, and these beautifully done, elegantly splayed legs on the bottom with beautiful brass casters. And this is estimated at 5 to 8,000 with a $2,600 opening bid. All right. So do check out this sale if you want to bring some beautiful furniture into your life or other beautiful accessories, beautiful mirrors. There's an extremely good pair of hurricane shades in the sale that are quite big, that are etched. If you want something really great to put on your table for the holidays some year, or put on a patio for an elegant party, hurricane shades are just great because they keep the candles from blowing out. Anyway, there's a whole bunch of stuff in this sale that I think is well worth looking at, so do give it a look. Okay, and now let's take a look at the Rippon Boswell sale. Okay, and then there's this sale. And I mentioned this sale last week in the weekly video. I talked about, I think, a couple of the rugs that are in here, but I wanted to come back and take a real look at it because this is a great collection. And great old rug collections that are highly focused don't turn up all that often in the market. And this is the collection of this gentleman here. And his name was Hans Sienknecht, and he was a German lawyer who died in 2024. But he was very well known in the rug world among rug collectors, especially for his Turkoman collection. And he was very successful in his business life. He was the head lawyer in the financing and shipping industry throughout Europe, and he built a hell of a career. And he was able to have a great hobby. And the people here wrote a very nice write up on him and so forth. He was well known. People knew him. He was a scholar. He enjoyed his hobby enormously, and he contributed a lot of information. And because he was very particular about little details, little small details, nuances that he would see in an object. He was very curious because he was a lawyer, after all, asked lots of questions, and he would dig around and find out what the story was, why this design is there, what's that design, and do the research, because it was very hard to research the Turkoman tribes, who were Central Asian weavers, because they didn't write anything down. Everything was word of mouth and by tradition. So you had to do an awful lot of looking up things to do with their carpets and textiles and art, to figure out roughly when they were made, how they were made, who was making them, what kind of wool was being used, all this, because the Turkoman tribes typically used their own wool for weaving rugs, and they would shear their sheep, spin the wool, get it dyed. Sometimes they paid people to do dyes. All the dyes were vegetable in his collection. They were natural dyes. They weren't imported German dyes like they saw flood into that part of the world after about 1890s, 1900, with acidic dyes and so forth. Anyway, he built a heck of a collection, and in here is a huge chunk of, I don't know if it's every rug that he owned, but there's about 70 rugs in here, and they look awfully good. And I'm going to go through a few of them and just discuss them quickly with you, because I'm such a fan, and I hope you'll enjoy them as much as I do. This one here, this is a wonderful rug. How big is this thing? It is 81 by 108 centimeters, so it's about 2.5. I'll give you a sense of size here. It's about almost 2 3/4 feet, 2 foot 8 inches by a little over about 3.5 feet wide. All right, and this is a Karadashli pattern, Karadashli tribe rug, or group as it's called. And the one thing that you'll notice on this is a circa 1850 or before rug. You'll notice this beautiful aubergine color that's in the background that variegates so gently, and this very lovely ivory, this old white wool ivory color, and then these beautiful, beautiful blues that they sprinkled in here. Now, these pieces were not made to be walked on particularly. They were made as storage bags, believe it or not. And As I was saying, storage bags, and they would have a back on them, a flat weave back with no pile on it, and they would be sewn along the edges and across the bottom. And at the top, they had closure loops, and you could put your things in them. They were like suitcases, basically. They were in effect a suitcase or like a giant backpack, and you would put your belongings in them, cooking utensils, clothing, whatever you needed, whatever a nomad would need who was moving around with herds of sheep and livestock from winter grazing to summer grazing areas and so forth. And then when they got to where they were going, they would put their yurts up, which are those wonderful huts you see throughout the region. And they would empty out the bags. They'd put some rugs down on the floor, and then they would put the bags. Often they would hang them on the walls and use them almost like shelves. If they needed them, sometimes they would use them as pillows. They would fill them with soft material and use them as pillows to sleep on at night. They were incredibly warm to rest your head on at night because they were all wool. And they were just a natural for that. And the Turkoman tribes all had their own patterns. The Arabachi, the Salors, the Sariks, the Yomuts, the Asaris, all these different tribes, they all had their own patterns and shapes of these flowers that they used. The way the gulls are done, these are these big emblems that you see, or the secondary gulls, which are the little gulls, the little emblems that go in between, and they all had their own way of doing it. So you could identify a tribe that was migrating through a region. So if you didn't know it, if you knew what you were doing, by the saddlebags they had, by the decorations on their bags, you could tell what the tribe was. And often if somebody from one tribe married into another tribe, they would bring with them part of their pattern, so they would integrate, and you would see mixed patterns on bags sometimes or on carpets that maybe are representative and used by 2 or 3 different tribes, and that also happened. All right, so you have a bunch of these. You have this is what a really great rarity that's in this sale. It's a very early Turkoman pieces. Any rug or carpet predating 1880, you're getting into rare stuff because they wore out and they were thrown away. And this rug was woven in the 1700s. This is a very, very old techie torba. It's a small bag, personal bag, and the colors on it are just splendid. The blues, this teal green that they used, it's a teal bluish green, very lovely. And they had all these wonderful border devices, these hook devices they used. This one's been trimmed off a tiny bit. Sometimes when the people removed them from their backs because they didn't want to ship them, with their backs attached because it added so much to the weight. So they would just sort of hack them off, and they weren't very careful sometimes. So you have this fringed area here that should have this a repeat of that border out here as well, and then an overcast end should be there. But they were carelessly often cut off when the bags were taken out of the country. But it's still a spectacular bag. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it at all. It was a very common thing to happen with these, and this is a very early bag. It's a very, very early torba. And it's estimated at $1,800 to $2,300. It measures 35. It's basically a foot tall and 3 feet long. But it's long and narrow. That's the style of it. And you go down here, they have Karadashli main carpets, estimated at $3,000 to $5,000, basically. Again, very tight, very uniform, beautiful colors. Overall, good condition. It's got a tiny wear area at the top, but the rest of it it's about colors and age on these. And is it visually beautiful? Because you're not going to put this on a floor. If you buy this rug and you put it on the floor, somebody should shoot you. All right, this rug should be up on a wall somewhere as a giant, hang them like tapestries. And that's what they do. You find them hung on walls in Europe. You don't find rugs hanging on walls very often in the United States. But in Europe, in beautiful houses, you'll often see a rare carpet or textile hung like a tapestry. And that's what you should be doing. This one was made around 1800. It's estimated at $3,500 to $4,500. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And then there's this one. This is a Chador bag. And again, striking color contrast. You have that aubergine ground that you only see really you don't see it too much after about 1850 or 60. It sort of disappeared, this particular shade of it, this beautiful color. And then you have these tulips coming up at the bottom, or floral devices. They always debate what they're supposed to be. And these very lovely big primary gulls, and the secondary gulls are also very nice with this pattern. And this is the very typical layout for these. And this one, it looks quite complete. You can see that it has its outer border here. It's not these hook devices. It's not cut off. They trimmed this bag properly, so it's got the full width of the end where it was wrapped on the end. Nicely done. Um, Estimated at 1,000 to $1,400, or 1,400 euros. It's not much difference these days. Mid 19th century. That's a bargain. That's a great piece. The starting price is just $800 for that. And then there's another one down here, another Karadashli example. Again, beautifully done. That color. I prefer the other one, but this is a nice one too. There's nothing wrong with it. I think the other one's a little prettier, but they're all very, very good. And then hopping along over here, you've got another Yomut main carpet fragment, they call it. And they're calling it a fragment, not because there's a big chunk of it missing, but it's been trimmed down the might have got cut or something happened here in the middle, because this device is out of alignment a little bit. So I'm not sure what happened there. But that's neither here nor there, because this rug was woven in probably about 1780. It's a very old carpet, $2,500 to $3,500 estimate. This is an Asari bag again, and the Asari bags tend to be pretty big bags. The Asaris as a group consistently wove, I think, probably the largest of the bags. But this is a beautiful example, and what's unusual about it, it has at the bottom this skirt across here with these devices, and these are typically seen on what are referred to as Bashir carpets. And here it is on this nice Asari piece. The Asaris and the Bashirs are pretty kissing cousins, but still it's an unusual thing to see. Very fine checkerboard borders you'll find on Asari pieces. And you'll often find the primary and the secondary gulls are the same size. And then they have all these little white hook devices that you don't generally see on other bags. Estimated, this is a mid-19th century one, 1850, $1,000 to $1,500. There's another one, again, with a whole bunch of flowers at the bottom. Another Asari piece is an Igder Cheval. This is a very lovely piece. These Igder pieces are wonderful. Some of you may recall on my Patreon page, we did a video about a bag in my own collection that's basically the kissing cousin of this, except ours has 16 gulls on it rather than 9. Or is it 12 gulls? I forget. There's a lot of gulls on it. It's unusual, but it's got the same border, this sort of insect border going up the side, and these nicely rounded red and blue hooks. And the question is always, are the hooks red or are they blue? It all depends on which way you look at it, I suppose. It's an optical illusion, but beautifully woven, and these are very, very finely done. And you could just go down and down, and all the pieces in here are worth buying. I went through all of the estimates, and none of them seemed out of line for what I'm seeing, for the rarity and the beauty of the pieces. And at the end, there is that very, very lovely, hold on a minute, I'm going to find it. There it is, the osmotic. Here it is. And I talked about this last week because it's such a rare thing. As I said, there's only maybe 3 of these in the world. It was woven in the 18th century. The colors are great, and it's unusual because it's on a white ground. And white ground Turkoman pieces do not turn up at all often. Only a few of them are known. There was a very famous one that was discovered here on the North Shore of Boston many years ago by an antique dealer who found it. It was on a table. The dealer was using it as a table mat at a flea market. It was he had it underneath pots and pans he was selling. He was using it so they wouldn't damage his table, and he had one. And I think he sold it. I think Rippon Boswell sold it, I think, for $40,000 back then. But anyway, this is a beautiful example. And again, this is an unusual form. And these are saddlebags again, but exceptionally rare. And it's fairly good size. It's almost 3 feet, 2 foot 8 inches by about 3 feet, 4 feet in length. It's a big one. $18,000 to $23,000. And again, this is not a rug you'd put on the floor. This is a rug you would very kindly hang in a living room or someplace. Look great with European furniture, great with American furniture, look great with anything. Look great in a modern house. Anyway, $18,000 to $23,000. Let's see if it doesn't beat that. And then you have this piece. The last one we're going to discuss is this. This is a Salor Shual. And you'll notice this is a very striking piece. It's very crisply drawn. And the reason is that these are very, 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 very finely woven. The knots on these are tiny. And because of it, they cut them, they shear them so close, the pile, they cut it so close, you get this very crisp, perfect design out of them. And this is a masterpiece. This is a real masterpiece. Is this wonderful magenta, probably, I suspect that's probably silk, often is. You have to check with the auctioneer, but I suspect it might be. And these sort of checkerboard patterns running around, all these wonderful geometric devices. And you'll notice that the devices in the borders tend to be a bit tighter and smaller than in other Turkoman pieces. They were quite elegant. And then across the top, you have these little things. So that's called a running dog tooth border running across the top. But this is look at that blue. What like an electric blue. And those are all natural dyes. There's no synthetic chemicals in this at all. They didn't exist. So this is a real great masterpiece. And what's it? Estimate is 26 to 30,000, and it measures 2 foot 8 inches again by about 5 feet long. This is a big one. It's a heck of a piece of carpet. And again, this is something you would hang. It's been published. Louise Mackey and John Thompson were two famous people. They wrote books, and this was apparently published in Turkmen Tribal Carpets and Traditions in Washington. That would have been for the Textile Museum back then. Eberhard Harriman, the famous dealer in Germany for many years. Hermann was a real character. Those of you that are sitting around hearing me say Hermann, he was a character and a half. He got into all kinds of trouble late in his career, but he had such an eye. He could spot the best rugs. And I was at an auction once that he was at, and the dealers were just cussing him for being there because he wasn't going to let go. He was a dog with a bone, and I believe his mother was in the business with him, and he published these great books. Every year he did the annual book of the best pieces in his collection, and he did a show, and it was like going to a fine art auction that he ran them in Germany, and he sold a lot of great rugs. But none of the I don't know of anybody that's come around since that quite did it the way Hermann did it. He was quite a phenomenon for quite a while. Anyway, that's it for the Boswell sale. Check out the rest of it though. There's a lot of good stuff in here. There's 26 pages of carpets in here, and there's Turkish rugs. There are icats, as you see here. There are all kinds of kilims, Caucasian rugs, Persian rugs, Anatolian village rugs, all of them. And they're all high quality. Every last one of them is high quality. Boswell's is extremely particular with their good sales about what goes into them. And it's about condition, rarity, and age, and beauty. It's always important. Because there are some very old rugs that are awfully ugly. And they don't sell for much. But beautiful old rugs are really something to come across. And here you see just a few. These are just some of the kilims in the sale and so forth. So do check it out. You can go to their site. As I've said many times, register and buy through the auction house rather than going, through live auctioneers to do it. All right. Have a great week. You got a call coming. Bye-bye.